I thought I was protecting my daughter. For months, I told myself the bruises, the fear, the weight loss were just part of her training. Now I know the truth, and I can't undo what I saw. When I picked my daughter up for my weekend, something about the way she was moving stopped me cold. She shuffled, stiff, almost wincing. I asked if she was okay, and she brushed me off with a smile, saying she was just tired from exercise. But then I saw it. The bruises. A perfect ring of dark purple around her waist, like she'd been wearing a belt made of pain. Every Sunday when I took her back to her mom's place, she could barely make it to the front door. And lately, she'd started talking about her fat stomach. My daughter weighs 65 pounds. 65. She's 10. One night, at 2 a.m., I found her in my bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor, crying, with my tape measure pulled so tight around her waist that her skin had turned ghost white. When I tried to take it from her, she begged me not to be mad, said she still had 4 hours to make up before she went back the next day. The more I watched her, the more I noticed. She never sat back in chairs anymore. She'd just stand there even during dinner. She'd sleep only on her side, whimpering if she rolled over. She'd lost weight, but only from her middle, like someone was physically squeezing her frame. When I texted my ex about the bruises, she shot back. She's doing gymnastics. Kids get bruises. Stop making drama. My daughter backed her up. Gymnastics is really hard, Daddy. You wouldn't understand. Friday night, I suggested ice cream after dinner. Just the two of us. She completely broke down. Not a tantrum. Panic attack. She was hyperventilating, shaking, gasping. I can't. I'll get fat and none of the boys will like me. 10 years old. Talking about boys not liking her. Later that night, I found her again in the bathroom. The tape measure was back. 23 inches, she whispered to herself. Still 3 inches too big. I'm so behind. When I asked what she meant, she said she'd been cheating at my house. Sitting down too much. Then she lifted her shirt. I almost threw up. The bruising wasn't purple anymore. It was nearly black. The skin had split in 3 places. She begged me not to tell anyone. Said they'd be mad. Make her do extra hours. She was terrified. The next morning, she woke up in a frenzy. It's Sunday. I have to go back. 8 hours on Sundays or it doesn't count. She refused breakfast. Kept looking at the clock like she was on a countdown to something terrible. When I dropped her off, she could barely walk, but she ran inside. On Monday, when I picked her up again, she could barely stand. Did my hours, she mumbled before collapsing into sleep for 17 straight hours. That night, while she slept, I went through her iPad. Her search history gutted me. How to make bruises heal faster. Is 20 inches too big for a waist? Why does my stomach hurt all the time? Then I found it. An Instagram account I'd never seen. My daughter posting workout videos. Hundreds of comments praising her dedication and transformation. And the messages, only 2 more inches and you'll be perfect. Remember our deal. 6 hours minimum today since you cheated yesterday. This is how we get beautiful. Pain is just weakness leaving. I wanted to call the police immediately, but I knew our local cops wouldn't do anything without proof. So I waited for her mom's custody day. Dropped her off. Parked around the corner. Waited. An hour later, I walked up to the house. Through the living room window, I saw her, doing the same motion over and over. There was this thunk 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 sound, steady and mechanical. I used my old key. What I walked into made my blood run cold. She was barely conscious, still moving, hips jerking with every rotation. Just 90 more minutes, sweetheart. You're doing so well, my ex cooed. Around my daughter's waist was a thick, heavy hula hoop, metal wrapped in foam. It had to weigh 20 pounds. My ex looked at me and smiled. Isn't it great? I called 911. While I was on the phone with the operator, my ex kept making Emma keep going, even though her legs were shaking so violently she could barely stay upright. Then Emma's eyes rolled back, and she crumpled. The hoop hit the floor with a sickening clang. Rachel screamed at me that I was ruining everything, that Emma was only 3 pounds from her goal weight. The paramedics arrived. The moment one EMT saw the bruising under Emma's shirt, they called for backup. Her blood pressure was so low they started in 4 right there on the living room floor. Rachel tried to follow us to the ambulance. I blocked her, told them she wasn't coming. At the hospital, they took Emma straight into trauma. Nurses photographed every single bruise. The marks around her waist were so dark they looked painted on. Finally, my little girl felt safe enough to cry. She clung to my hand so tight her nails dug into my skin. Dr. Davis came in, took one look at her, and ordered blood work and x-rays immediately. She was worried about internal organ damage from all that compression. She told me she'd seen abuse before, but never anything this calculated. About an hour after we got to the hospital, Rachel showed up. She was furious, demanding to see Emma, waving the parental rights card like it was her golden ticket. I told security to keep her out. They didn't just keep her out. They stationed a guard right at Emma's door. That's when Detective Torres from Child Crimes walked in with his partner. I handed him my phone and pulled up the Instagram account. He scrolled for a few minutes, and I swear, with each swipe, his face got darker. For months of posts. For months of Emma's progress. For months of someone documenting her slow destruction. He took her iPad as evidence and gently asked if Emma felt up to talking. She looked at me, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Okay." She didn't let go of me the entire time. At first, it was just little bits and pieces. But once the dam broke, it all came pouring out. The 8-hour Sundays. The nights she had to sleep in that weighted hoop. Rachel measuring her waist every morning and tacking on another hour of training, if it hadn't shrunk enough. The videos Rachel forced her to record, smiling through the pain, talking about how grateful she was for the training. When she showed him a video of herself crying during a 2 a.m. session, Torres had to step out into the hallway. 3 hours later, a CPS caseworker named Grace Sullivan arrived. While Emma finally slept, Grace and Torres went through every piece of evidence, right there in her hospital room, and started the paperwork for an emergency protective order. Then Dr. Davis came back with the x-rays. 3 cracked ribs, severe muscle and tissue damage. Healing would take months. I just sat there watching my daughter sleep. No wincing, no flinching. Her breathing was calm for the first time in I don't know how long. Tom came by with her favorite stuffed elephant and a few books. We didn't even talk. We just sat there, stunned. Around 2 a.m., chaos erupted. A nurse came running. Rachel had slipped past the front desk and was storming down the hall. Security caught her at Emma's door, screaming about her special bond with Emma, accusing me of poisoning my own daughter against her. Emma woke up terrified. The nurse had to give her something to calm her down. The next morning, Miss Harper, Emma's teacher, showed up. She told Detective Torres she'd been keeping notes for weeks about how Emma couldn't sit in her chair, how she stood during lessons. She even had dated entries. That's when Emma admitted Rachel had threatened her if she ever told anyone at school. The custody hearing happened that very day, right in the hospital over video call. Judge Patterson looked through the medical reports and the Instagram account. Rachel's lawyer tried to spin it as doctor recommended for childhood obesity. The judge asked for the doctor's name. She had none. Immediate temporary full custody went to me. 0 contact for Rachel. Then Torres dug deeper and found 3 different child fitness groups Rachel was active in. Parents sharing tips, comparing waist measurements like they were racing for a trophy. Rachel's posts about Emma got hundreds of likes. Torres screenshotted everything before the groups went private. That afternoon, Emma woke up and, God, she looked so scared. "Am I in trouble for lying about gymnastics?" she asked. Pulled her into a hug. "Not one bit of this is your fault." She cried hard, telling me Rachel made her rehearse the gymnastics story every single week. Later, Dr. Williams, an older physician, came in. He explained Emma would need months of physical therapy just to repair the damage to her core muscles. The mental scars would take far longer. The nutritionist nearly fell out of her chair when she learned Emma had been surviving on 800 calories a day for 4 months. That's when Emma admitted she used to sneak food at my place and then throw up because she felt guilty for cheating. 3 days later, my phone lit up. Emma was having a meltdown. Rachel had found a way around the no-contact order by using a friend's phone, sending dozens of messages about how Emma was giving up on their dream and would regret it when she got fat. Torres immediately added witness tampering to the charges. Grace kept digging, talking to Emma's friends. We learned she'd stopped going to birthday parties because cake made her panic. She quit soccer because Rachel said bulky legs weren't attractive. One mom even saw Rachel forcing Emma to work out in a park until she was sobbing. That same week, I tried to have a simple dinner with Emma, mac and cheese, her choice. She seemed excited, until 3 bites in, when she froze and started breathing fast. She pushed the plate away. The hospital therapist later told me it could take years to heal her relationship with food. When we went to Rachel's house to pack Emma's things, we found hidden cameras in her room, behind picture frames in corners, recording every training session. Then Tom found the journal. Every calorie Emma ate, every minute of exercise. Notes saying she'd thrown up from exhaustion, and that this was good progress. One entry stopped me cold. Started Emma on the program. If it worked for Claire, it will work for Emma. Claire, Rachel's teenage niece. I remembered she'd moved to Michigan last year. Torres tracked her down in Detroit. She was 16 now, and when he video called her, she broke down. Rachel had put her through the exact same regime until she tried to take her own life. Her dad hadn't pressed charges because family, but now he was willing to testify. A week later, Rachel's lawyer filed a countersuit claiming I was alienating Emma. She even presented a letter from a pediatrician recommending intense exercise. Torres ran the name. No such doctor existed. The license number belonged to a dead dentist. Emma started physical therapy soon after. The moment they touched her core muscles, she panicked, screaming about getting bigger. Took an hour to calm her down. The therapist told me the psychological damage was far worse than the physical. One night around 3 a.m., I heard movement in her hospital room. I walked in to find her doing sit-ups in bed, blankets thrown to the floor, tears streaming down her face as she counted under her breath. She begged me not to tell anyone, said Rachel would find out and punish her. The next day, Miss Harper brought a folder of Emma's recent schoolwork. Every story she'd written in the last 4 months was about not being good enough, about shrinking herself, about disappearing. One story, about a girl who shrinks until she's invisible, made Torres immediately order a full psych evaluation. The psychologist spent hours with her. The report was devastating. Severe PTSD, body dysmorphia, and a full-blown eating disorder. The recommendation was clear: intensive therapy, and absolutely no contact with Rachel. 2 weeks into Emma's hospital stay, Detective Torres called with news that made my stomach turn. He'd been combing through Rachel's online orders and found she'd been buying banned diet supplements from shady overseas sites, then grinding them up and slipping them into Emma's food. The toxicology report from the night she was admitted backed it up. There were traces of substances so dangerous for kids they could cause permanent organ damage. And now the FBI was stepping in. Federal charges were on the table. Before I could even process that, Rachel's mother called me out of the blue. She confessed she'd tried to get custody of Emma 6 months earlier after walking in on one of Rachel's training sessions. But Rachel had threatened to cut her off completely if she said a word. She'd been secretly recording their phone calls ever since. Conversations where Rachel described her methods in horrifying detail, mocking Emma for crying and calling her pathetic for not being able to handle the sessions. After 3 weeks, Emma was finally cleared to leave the hospital, but she refused to even drive past her mom's house to grab clothes or toys. Just the suggestion of it sent her spiraling into a full-blown panic attack in the hospital parking lot. Hyperventilating so badly we had to go back inside for over an hour before she calmed down. Tom and his wife, Sarah, immediately offered their home. My apartment was too small for a full-time setup, and Emma needed stability. That first night at Tom's, she didn't sleep at all. She kept checking the locks on every door and window, whispering, "Does she know where we are?" over and over. She finally drifted off around 6 in the morning, curled up on the couch with her old stuffed elephant. the one she hadn't touched in years. I stayed awake just watching her chest rise and fall without the constant wince I'd grown used to seeing. Grace helped me push through all the emergency custody paperwork while Torres kept building the criminal case. The prosecutor warned me Rachel would fight it hard and try to flip the script, paint me as the abuser. And sure enough, her lawyer started doing exactly that. We were assigned a victim's advocate to help Emma through the legal mess. But just 3 weeks later, chaos hit again. I was in the kitchen making lunch when there was pounding on the front door. Rachel, screaming that I'd kidnapped her daughter. Tom grabbed his phone to call 911 while I pulled Emma into the basement. She hid in a storage closet, shaking so violently I thought she might pass out. Police arrested Rachel right there in the yard for violating the protective order. But Emma wouldn't come out of that closet for 2 more hours. Her first session with the trauma specialist was brutal. She could barely speak above a whisper and kept asking if the therapist would tell Rachel what she said, if she'd get in trouble for talking about the training. It took the full hour just to convince her everything said in that room would stay there. A few days later, I was putting away laundry when I found plastic bags stuffed behind her dresser. Inside, half-eaten sandwiches, cookies, even cold pizza from the night before, all wrapped in napkins. When I asked her about it, she broke down completely, sobbing that she didn't know how to eat right anymore. What was too much, what was too little? Sarah held her for an hour while she cried. Meanwhile, Torres was uncovering a much bigger horror. He tracked down 6 other families from Rachel's fitness group. Same pattern every time. Kids with bruised waists, dramatic weight loss, and parents bragging about special programs. The FBI discovered this wasn't just local. It spanned 12 states. Within a week, parents in Texas, Florida, and California were arrested. Then came the supervised visitation. The court ordered it a month after everything blew open. Rachel's mom had been sitting on those recordings the whole time, choosing family drama over a child's safety. I drove Emma to the family services building with a knot in my gut. The supervisor, a woman with kind, tired eyes, led us to a small room with toys and books. Rachel was already there, sitting ramrod straight in a plastic chair. Emma froze in the doorway. Rachel smiled and told her she'd destroyed their family by being lazy. The supervisor shut it down instantly. Visit over. Emma didn't eat for 2 days after that. Tom and Sarah spent hours researching eating disorder programs while I kept her on a strict physical therapy schedule. Even so, the therapist was stunned. Emma had the muscle strength of a 5-year-old. Recovery could take a year, maybe longer. One night, she found our old photo albums. She stopped at a picture from her 8th birthday. Cake smeared across her face, laughing without a care in the world. She looked up at me and asked, "Will I ever be that kid again?" I didn't have an answer. I just pulled her close while she cried. Then Torres called with another bombshell. Rachel's former best friend, Melissa, had been secretly recording her for months, disturbed by what she was hearing. Hours of audio, Rachel bragging about her methods, talking about writing a book she called Revolutionary Parenting for the Modern Age. She'd even been making expansion plans, targeting single parents willing to pay for results. Melissa's evidence was the nail in the coffin. 2 days later, the prosecutor filed charges. Aggravated child abuse, child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license, witness tampering. Rachel's lawyer tried the mental illness angle, but the recordings showed calculated planning, spreadsheets tracking each kid's measurements and payment schedules. Emma tried joining a support group for kids with eating disorders, but most of the others were teenagers who'd chosen to restrict food. None of them could grasp what it was like to be 10 years old and forced into it until your body broke. The therapist suggested sticking to one-on-one sessions for now, but I could see it in her face. Emma had never felt more alone. 6 weeks after uncovering the abuse, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could start easing back into work. Big mistake. I'd sit in meetings staring at spreadsheets, but all I could think about was Emma. Did she eat lunch? Was she okay at therapy? Was she panicking without me there? Halfway through a budget presentation, I just broke. In front of 20 coworkers. Tears. Shaking. I couldn't stop it. My boss pulled me aside, told me to take family leave. Tom even took time off his job so he could help with appointments. Then Claire's dad called Detective Torres. And what he had, I still can't think about without feeling sick. Turns out Claire had secretly backed up videos from Rachel's phone months earlier. The footage showed Rachel forcing her through brutal exercises while she sobbed, begging to stop. In one clip, Claire collapsed on the floor, gasping, and Rachel screamed at her to get up, calling her weak and pathetic. Another showed Rachel measuring her waist as Claire cried out that it hurt. Torres called me that same afternoon, his voice tight, almost shaking, telling me what he'd seen. A week later, Emma's therapist brought out art supplies instead of trying to talk. I waited in the lobby, but 40 minutes in, the therapist came out looking pale. She asked me to come see something. On the desk were page after page of drawings. Stick figures shrinking smaller and smaller until they were just dots. Houses with no doors, no windows, just blacked-out rectangles. Measuring tapes with angry eyes and sharp teeth chasing a tiny girl. Each page had a date in the corner going back months. The therapist said Emma was literally drawing herself disappearing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking on her every hour. Around 3 a.m., I found her bed empty. Panic shot through me. She was in the garage, standing barefoot on an old bathroom scale Tom had stored there, just staring at the number. 58 pounds. She dropped 17 pounds from her healthy weight 6 months ago. She didn't even notice me, kept stepping off and on like she thought it might change. 2 days later, the nutritionist sat me down and explained something called refeeding syndrome, how it could kill someone who's been severely malnourished if they suddenly eat too much. She gave us a strict plan. 6 tiny meals a day, starting with broth and crackers, then slowly adding protein and vegetables over weeks. Every meal turned into a war. Emma crying, pushing the spoon away, swearing her stomach hurt. Sometimes it took 2 hours just to get through a bowl of soup. And then Rachel's lawyer filed a motion claiming I'd coached Emma to lie. They included glowing statements from her fitness friends about what a dedicated mom she was. The judge appointed a guardian ad litem, an independent attorney named Jennifer Walsh, to investigate. When I told Emma, she clamped onto my arm so hard her nails broke skin, begging me not to let anyone send her back. Jennifer was soft-spoken, patient. She met with Emma 3 times, never pushing. On the second visit, Emma finally lifted her shirt. Jennifer's face went still. She took photos, measured the scars around Emma's waist, noted how her ribs stuck out like she hadn't eaten in weeks. Emma told her how she'd sometimes sleep standing against the wall because lying down hurt too much. One afternoon, Tom's kids tried to get her to play outside. She made it to the porch steps and had to sit down, winded. Her 8-year-old cousin asked, "Why do you walk like an old lady?" I watched Emma's face change, like something inside her just snapped. That night, she asked me in the smallest voice if she'd ever run again. The next morning, Torres called with something that made me physically sit down. Rachel had taken out a life insurance policy on Emma 6 months ago, $500,000, specifically covering accidental death during physical activity. The prosecutor immediately tacked on attempted murder charges. Rachel posted bail within hours and went straight to social media, posting a rambling, self-righteous rant about being persecuted for caring about her daughter's health. It blew up in those extreme parenting groups. And then the threats started. Messages saying I was making Emma obese, that I should lose custody for enabling laziness. Someone left a dead rat on Tom's porch with a note. Child abusers deserve worse. I changed my phone number. Tom installed security cameras. Meanwhile, Miss Harper worked with the school to make a plan for Emma's eventual return. Permission to stand during class, extra time for assignments, a private lunch area so she wouldn't have to eat in front of everyone. The school counselor would check on her daily. 3 days later, at Tom's house, Emma found one of Rachel's old training schedules tucked in a cookbook, an hourly plan with exercises, measurements, punishments for missing goals. She collapsed to the kitchen floor sobbing, saying she was so behind, repeating it over and over like a mantra. Took 3 of us 3 hours to calm her down. The next 2 weeks blurred into therapy sessions, court prep, and Emma waking up every night screaming about her schedule. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Torres called. His voice, it was different. Cold. Get down to the station now. I left Emma with Tom and drove over, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. Torres met me in the lobby and led me straight to a conference room. Two people in dark suits were waiting, FBI badges on the table. The woman slid a folder toward me. Inside were printed emails between Rachel and a man named Marcus Chun in California. My stomach dropped as I read. Marcus ran an exclusive children's fitness program and had been shipping Rachel performance-enhancing supplements for the last 3 months. They weren't vitamins. They were prescription steroids, appetite suppressants, and something called DNP, a chemical bodybuilders use to burn fat fast. The side effects list was a nightmare. Organ damage, heart failure, stunted growth. Then they told me Rachel had already signed Emma up for a competition in Los Angeles next month. 12 hours of non-stop fitness challenges, while parents watched and bet money on the kids. Entry fee, $5,000. The FBI agent flipped through photos from previous events. Children sprawled on gym mats with IVs in their arms while parents cheered. 3 kids had died at these competitions in the last 2 years. Rachel already had the plane tickets. That week, Emma's physical therapist called with the results from her latest checkup. The words she said will haunt me forever. The compression damage to Emma's kidneys? Permanent. She'd need monitoring for years, maybe for the rest of her life. Her bone density was like that of a 60-year-old woman. And then there was the insurance policy. $500,000. Taken out by Rachel, covering accidental death during physical activity. Suddenly, the training, the steroids, the competitions where kids collapsed, it all took on an even darker meaning. The therapist kept apologizing, like it was her fault, telling me her muscle tone was improving, but nothing could reverse the organ damage. I tried to have a normal night with Emma that Friday. We put on her favorite talking dog movie. She couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes, shifting, wincing, changing positions constantly. Halfway through, she got up and started stretching in front of the TV. She swore it wasn't exercise, just staying loose. She kept going for the rest of the movie. That same week, Attorney Walsh submitted her court report, 40 pages documenting every injury, every therapy session, every night terror. Her conclusion was blunt. Rachel's parental rights should be terminated immediately. She even noted signs of Stockholm Syndrome. Emma still defending Rachel, insisting the exercise had helped her. The hearing got set for 3 months out. Rachel's mother flew in from Florida to testify. She broke down on the stand, describing how she'd seen Rachel force Emma to keep training while running a 103 degrees fever. Rachel exploded, screaming that her mother was lying, that everyone was jealous of her success, that it was all a conspiracy. The bailiff had to drag her out while she kept yelling that the whole world was against her. We moved Emma to a new school across town where no one knew what had happened. The first week went fine until PE. The teacher had them run laps, and Emma completely panicked halfway through. She locked herself in the bathroom, convinced she'd be punished for not finishing. When the teacher found her, she was in a stall doing jumping jacks, sobbing about making up the missed exercise. They excused her from PE permanently, but Emma kept asking when she could go back, like she was failing somehow. 2 weeks later, I checked her school iPad and my blood ran cold. Search history. How to exercise without anyone knowing, silent workouts for kids, exercises you can do lying in bed. When I asked her about it gently, she cried, saying she felt guilty for not exercising, like she was betraying something, but couldn't explain what. She said her body felt wrong without pain. The next hearing, the prosecutor presented Rachel's own search history. How much weight loss before organ failure, minimum calories for child survival. These searches went back 6 months, long before she ever claimed to be writing a book. The judge ordered a full psychiatric evaluation. That's when Rachel's fitness group went on the attack. Dr. Davis called me in tears. Someone had posted her home address online, labeling her an enabler of childhood obesity. People showed up outside her house taking pictures of her kids. She had to get a restraining order. The physical therapist got death threats. The nutritionist's office windows were smashed. A website appeared with Emma's before and after photos, claiming we were abusing her by letting her gain weight. 4 months after this nightmare began, Emma finally hit 63 pounds at her weigh-in. The nutritionist clapped. Emma fell apart, sobbing that she was failing, that the number was supposed to go down, that she was bad. I held her for 3 hours while she shook and cried, saying she was ruining everything. The next week, Tom took us to the park to take her mind off it. Emma sat on the bench, watching other kids on the swings and jungle gym like she was observing another species. A little girl fell off the slide and laughed, jumping back up. Emma grabbed my arm. "She's not counting," she whispered, eyes locked on the girl. "She's just playing without counting anything." She watched the other kids for an hour, asking me if they were allowed to just run around without timing themselves. Meanwhile, Detective Torres kept digging. He found 3 gyms that had banned Rachel. At one, she tried to enroll 8-year-olds in adult boot camp classes. At another, staff caught her measuring children's waists in the locker room. The third had security footage of her forcing a kid to do burpees until she vomited. While I was making Emma dinner one night, Torres called again. The prosecutors had been combing through Rachel's training logs and notebooks. One entry from just 2 months ago made my stomach turn. Emma passed out for 10 minutes during training. Excellent progress. As a reward, Rachel had cut her dinner in half. This, the prosecutor told me, changes everything. We're upgrading the charges from child abuse to attempted murder. The next day, Emma's therapist called it a breakthrough. During their session, Emma had drawn Rachel as a giant monster made of measuring tapes. The monster had her trapped in a cage made of hula hoops. And for the first time, Emma showed anger, stabbing the drawing over and over with a red crayon for 20 straight minutes. About 5 months after I first learned what Rachel had been doing, Emma asked me something that just shattered me. We were eating breakfast when she suddenly looked up and said, "Does my mom love me? Even a little?" I froze. What could I possibly say? I just reached for her hand. I told her that sometimes people think they're showing love, but the way they do it ends up hurting the person instead. She nodded, but I could see in her eyes. She didn't believe me. She kept asking, "Then why did she want to make me so small I'd disappear?" 3 weeks later, the criminal trial started. Rachel arrived at the courthouse like she was stepping onto a runway. Hair perfectly styled, a tailored suit, pearls. She smiled for cameras, telling reporters she was the victim of a witch hunt for promoting healthy living. And unbelievably, there were people outside with signs supporting her. Parents' rights, government overreach. The prosecutor had decided Emma wouldn't have to testify in person. A huge relief. Instead, they played her recorded interviews from the children's hospital. You could have heard a pin drop when the photos appeared on the big screen. Black rings of bruises, the cracked skin, the before and after pictures showing how much weight she'd lost. One woman on the jury tried to hide her tears. Then came the videos. Footage Rachel had filmed herself. Emma collapsing mid-training, gasping for breath. Rachel had originally taken them as proof of Emma's dedication. Now they were the prosecution's smoking gun. On the 3rd day, Rachel took the stand and dropped a bomb. She claimed I'd been sexually abusing Emma, and that the exercise was her way of helping her heal. The whole courtroom gasped. My stomach turned inside out. The prosecutor was on his feet instantly, pointing out she'd never mentioned this to anyone. Not police, not doctors, not therapists, until she was facing charges. No reports, no evidence, nothing. The judge warned her about perjury. She just doubled down, spinning lie after lie. The next day, Dr. Davis, Emma's pediatrician from before all this, testified. She showed the jury Emma's growth charts, the perfect health she'd been in before the training began. Year after year of normal weight and development, right up until Rachel's program. During a recess, they let me sit with Emma in a quiet room where she was watching on a TV. She looked so small in that big leather chair, picking at the hem of her shirt. "Will everyone always know what happened to me?" she asked softly. I told her we could move anywhere she wanted. Start fresh. She thought about it, then asked, "Can we go somewhere with no gyms?" 6 months later, we were back in court. This time, the prosecution called Claire, Rachel's niece, to testify by video from another state. She was 16 now, but she looked exhausted, like she'd been carrying this weight for years. She told the jury Rachel had done the exact same thing to her at 12. 8 hours a day with that weighted hula hoop until her ribs cracked. Couldn't eat solid food for 3 months. And Rachel had threatened to hurt her younger siblings if she ever told anyone. The prosecutor showed photos. Claire's middle ringed with the same dark bruises Emma had. Then Melissa, Rachel's former best friend, took the stand. She pulled up text messages from Rachel's phone. Rachel bragging about Emma being her project to prove her methods. Screenshots of her obsessively comparing Emma to Instagram images of emaciated child models. Saying she was going to make Emma Instagram perfect, no matter what it took. The defense countered by parading members of Rachel's fitness group up to the stand. Women talking about how kids today are too fat and need discipline. One admitted her own daughter had lost weight using Rachel's tips, but never more than an hour a day. And then Rachel's lawyer tried the same pathetic excuse. Those horrifying internet searches were research for a book. The prosecutor summed it all up in closing arguments. Rachel's notebooks logging every minute Emma exercised. Every time she threw up. The life insurance policy she'd taken out just 2 months before starting the program. And the plan to sell Emma's transformation as part of a profit-making fitness brand. The jury was gone for 3 hours. When they came back with guilty on all 12 counts, Rachel started screaming that Emma would die without her help. That we were all going to make her obese. In the other room, Emma was watching on the TV. And for the first time in over a year, I saw her shoulders drop, her whole body relax, like she was finally free. 2 weeks before sentencing, Emma was still waking up at 5 a.m. on the dot. That was training time in Rachel's world. She'd just sit there in bed, looking lost, like she didn't know what to do without the routine. So I started getting up with her. We'd curl up on the couch and read until she got sleepy again. Then came the family court hearing. The judge didn't just restrict Rachel's rights. She terminated them completely. She looked over the paperwork, shook her head, and said that in 30 years on the bench, she'd never seen abuse so calculated and severe that didn't end in death. Emma wasn't there to hear it, but that night, she asked me in this tiny, careful voice if it meant Rachel could never make her exercise again. Never, I told her. Never ever again. At sentencing, Emma's whole medical team showed up. The kidney specialist explained that the dehydration and muscle breakdown had left lasting damage. She'd need monitoring well into adulthood for possible kidney failure. The bone doctor showed x-rays of her growth plates. The damage might make her shorter than she should have been. And then Rachel's own mother stepped forward to give a victim impact statement. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. She apologized to Emma over and over, said she'd known Rachel had problems but never dreamed it could go this far. Then she dropped a detail that stunned the courtroom. Rachel had done the same thing to their pets growing up. Starving cats for days because she thought skinny looked prettier. When it was my turn, I told them about the little girl who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while I made dinner, and how she turned into a child who measured her waist 20 times a day. I told them about finding her in my bathroom with the tape measure pulled so tight her skin had gone white, begging me not to be mad that she'd cheated by sitting down at my house. The gallery was silent except for the sound of people crying. Then the judge asked Rachel if she wanted to speak. She jumped up so fast her own lawyer tried to pull her back down. And she went off. She claimed she'd been saving Emma from a life of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. She said I was the real abuser for letting Emma eat whatever she wanted and be lazy. She kept getting louder, drowning out the judge's attempts to cut her off. She launched into a rant about the obesity epidemic, rattling off statistics like she'd memorized them for this moment. She said Emma would thank her one day for not being fat and disgusting like all the other kids. The prosecutor actually objected. Rachel ignored him. Finally, the bailiff stepped forward and Rachel stopped, but she locked her eyes on me, glaring like I was the reason she was there. The judge took a breath and began. 25 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for 15 years. Rachel's face drained of color. Her lawyer caught her by the arm to keep her from stumbling. The judge went on, calling it exceptional cruelty and a complete lack of remorse, saying Rachel had shown zero understanding of the harm she caused. That's when Rachel started screaming again, calling us idiots, threatening to sue everyone in the room, yelling that we'd regret it when Emma got diabetes. The bailiffs dragged her out, still shouting about saving America's children. The next week, Emma's therapy team laid out the plan. At least 3 years of nutritional rehab, physical therapy, and trauma counseling. The Victim Compensation Fund would cover most of it, but nothing could cover the emotional cost. They showed me charts of organ function, damage that might take years to heal if it ever did. 2 weeks later, we went to Tom's to thank him and his family. Emma played with her cousins for about 10 minutes before tiring out, but it was the first time I'd seen her play without counting movements or checking a clock. She even smiled, a real unguarded smile, when Tom's youngest handed her a crayon drawing of them together. That's when we decided to move. We found a little town 3 hours away where no one knew our story. Emma picked her new room and asked if she could paint it purple. Rachel had always demanded white walls, said colors were distracting. We spent the whole day at the hardware store picking paint swatches, and Emma didn't once mention calories, or exercise, or being behind. She started her new school in September. When the teacher asked the class to share their hobbies, Emma froze for a second, then said softly, "Reading. Not gymnastics. Not training. Just reading." The teacher smiled and moved on. And for the first time in a long, long time, Emma leaned back in her chair and looked at peace. 8 months after I found her with that tape measure in the bathroom, we went in for a follow-up with Dr. Davis. Emma had gained 10 pounds. Her organ function was getting better. And for the first time, she didn't cry when she stepped on the scale. Didn't even ask what the number was. She just hopped off and asked if we could grab lunch afterward. She was still underweight, but moving in the right direction. Then the letter came. Rachel was appealing her conviction. The prosecutor called and told me not to panic. Appeals like this almost never succeed, but try telling that to an 11-year-old who still wakes up shaking from nightmares. Emma started checking the locks every night, asking me, "Are you sure she can't find us?" 6 months into the new school year, Emma made her first real friend. A quiet girl named Amy who loved reading as much as she did. Their first playdate, they just sat in Emma's room eating snacks and reading side by side. Emma had 2 cookies. No calorie questions. No counting her chews. No timer. Just cookies, books, and laughter. The appeal decision came just before Emma's 11th birthday. Denied. Rachel would serve every year of her sentence. "Will I ever have to see her again?" Emma asked. "Never," I promised. Her response, "Can we get a dog?" Rachel never allowed pets. Too messy. Too distracting from training. We went to the shelter that weekend, and Emma walked straight past the barking puppies to a calm, older golden retriever sitting quietly in the corner. He rested his head in her lap, and she smiled. A real smile. She named him Buddy on the spot. From day one, Buddy slept in her bed, followed her everywhere. She fed him on schedule without me asking, measuring out his food carefully and telling him how eating made him strong and healthy. The school counselor suggested art club instead of sports, and Emma was relieved. She started painting massive landscapes, mountains, rivers, sunsets. Never people. Her art teacher told me she had real talent, even showed me a sunset she'd painted that looked professional. At her 1-year recovery appointment, Emma had gained 15 pounds and grown 2 inches. The nutritionist said we could ditch the rigid meal tracking. Saturday mornings became pancake mornings. She flipped them herself, adding way too many chocolate chips. Evening walks with Buddy turned into our thing, no step counts, no heart rate checks. Just wandering while he sniffed every tree. Her therapist still warned me there'd be setbacks. And there were. Some mornings she'd skip breakfast. Some nights I'd hear her doing exercises in her room. But she was stronger. Her hair was thicker. And the laughs, the real ones, were coming back. One afternoon, Buddy tipped over the trash can trying to get at a sandwich wrapper, and Emma laughed so hard she could barely breathe. She chased him around the yard, running without thinking about calories or training, just a kid playing with her dog. That's when I really knew we were going to make it. The school talent show rolled around, and Emma signed up to do a live painting demonstration. She stood in front of the whole auditorium explaining how she mixed colors to get the perfect sunset. Nobody there knew her story. She was just a girl sharing her art. The applause was huge. And then came Sunday morning. Exactly 1 year since I'd found out the truth. Emma slept until 9. Number 5 a.m. wake-ups. No panic about a schedule. She padded downstairs in her dinosaur pajamas, asked what was for breakfast, and sat down without hesitation. Ate her waffles without counting bites, without checking her stomach. We're not perfect. We're not fully healed. But we're here. One day at a time. She caught me watching her and smiled. A real one. I'm okay, Dad, she said. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I believed her.